When you finally stop caring, something powerful shifts inside you, something she never saw coming. For the longest time, she was used to your consistency, your presence, your effort. You were the one who always showed up, always tried to make things right, always put in the emotional labor to keep the connection alive. She didn't even have to think about losing you because, in her mind, you were anchored to her. She believed no matter what she said, no matter how she acted, no matter how much she pushed you away, you would still be there. But the moment you stop giving a damn, the moment you stop pouring energy into someone who stopped appreciating it, everything in her world begins to shift in ways she never expected. It's not because you're trying to play a game or manipulate her, it's because something inside you finally wakes up. You recognize your worth, your value, your peace. You realize that chasing someone who doesn't meet you halfway is the fastest way to lose yourself. So you pull back, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You stop giving the emotional reactions you once relied on. You stop rushing to answer messages. You stop explaining yourself just to keep the peace. You stop being the emotional cushion she used to fall back on. And in that silence, as she finally hears everything she ignored, your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. She starts noticing patterns she never paid attention to before. She starts noticing the good man she overlooked, the patience she took for granted, the loyalty she didn't reciprocate. She starts remembering the little things, your effort, your reassurance, your availability. And suddenly she realizes those things aren't guaranteed anymore. They were privileges, not rights. They were gifts, not obligations. And when those gifts disappear, she feels the void like a shock wave. When you stop giving a damn, she starts questioning everything. She asks herself why you're different now, why you're calmer, why you're unbothered, why you're no longer emotionally tangled in her moods. That shift in energy forces her to confront something she never wanted to admit. She depended on your attention more than she realized. Your care fed her ego. Your affection kept her grounded. Your presence gave her security. And now that security is dissolving in front of her. She starts comparing the past version of you, always eager, always available, to the new version who simply walks with confidence, with clarity, with self respect. And that comparison scares her because it shows her the truth. You weren't the one who needed her the most. She was the one who depended on your emotional devotion without even realizing it. And losing that devotion feels like losing control. You see, a man becomes the most powerful when he becomes emotionally independent, when he stops tying his identity to someone's approval, when he stops placing his happiness in the hands of someone who hasn't earned that responsibility. That's the moment everything changes. And that's the moment she feels the shift the most. She feels the pressure of her own decisions. She feels the regret she never expected to feel. She feels the loss of a man she thought would always remain no matter how she treated him. But this transformation isn't about hurting her, it's about healing you. It's about reclaiming your power, your peace, your purpose. And the irony is, the second you stop giving a damn about losing her, that's when she starts becoming terrified of losing you. Because suddenly she realizes she might be the one who made the biggest mistake, and your detachment forces her to face that reality. And that's exactly when everything begins to shift in your favor. When you stop giving a damn, something changes in the atmosphere, something she can feel even if you never say a word. Your energy stops orbiting around her. Your attention, which once felt like a steady stream, becomes a calm silence. And whether she admits it or not, that silence starts to bother her. It shakes the comfort she once had in knowing you were always emotionally available, always willing to fix things, always eager to keep the connection alive. But when you withdraw that emotional currency, she begins to feel the reality of what she's losing. For a long time, she may have believed that your emotions were predictable. She could raise her voice, pull back, ignore you, or even take you for granted, and still you would come running because you cared too much. But when you reach that point where you genuinely stop caring, your behavior no longer follows its script, and that unpredictability becomes unsettling for her. It makes her question what changed inside you. It makes her wonder if you've moved on emotionally, mentally, or even physically. Sudden, Suddenly, she's no longer in control of the dynamic she thought she understood. This shift affects her more deeply than most men realize because when a woman feels the loss of emotional influence, she doesn't just lose attention, She loses the version of herself that felt validated by your effort. She loses the reassurance that she could return anytime and still find you waiting. She loses the comfort of knowing your loyalty was unconditional. And that loss forces her to confront her own behavior in a way she never had to before. She has to face the reality that the man she once believed would always stay is now slipping away, not because of another woman, not because of anger, but because he finally chose himself. Your indifference becomes a mirror that reflects her actions back at her. She starts replaying the moments when she should have appreciated you but didn't. She starts remembering the times you reached out and she dismissed you. She starts realizing how one sided the effort had become, and that recognition doesn't sit quietly inside her. It grows, it presses on her conscience, it makes her rethink the entire dynamic from the beginning. Because when a woman senses she's losing a man who was once deeply invested, it triggers a kind of emotional panic that logic can't control. She may begin checking your social media, wondering why you seem happier without her. She may ask mutual friends how you're doing. She may start posting things online designed to catch your attention. She may even reach out to you directly, subtly at first, then more boldly, just to see if you still care. But this isn't because she suddenly changed, it's because your energy changed. When a man's emotional detachment is genuine, it forces a woman to confront the truth she was avoiding. He was the stable presence. He was the source of emotional value, and he was the one who held the relationship together. And here's the powerful part: you didn't have to prove anything, you didn't have to argue, beg, or convince her of your worth. All you had to do was stop giving your energy to someone who wasn't giving it back. And that alone shifted the entire dynamic. Your silence became your strength, your distance became your boundary, and your indifference became the wake up call she never saw coming. In that moment, she understands something she never wanted to face, that the man she thought she could afford to lose is the same man she can't stop thinking about now. And that realization hits harder than any breakup ever could. That's when the power begins to return to you. There comes a moment in every man's journey when he realizes that constantly proving his worth to someone who doesn't value it is a battle he can never win. When you stop giving a damn, that moment becomes clear. You stop trying to convince her of your intentions. You stop trying to explain your worth. You stop bending over backward to justify your presence. And without even trying, you create a contrast so powerful that it forces her to reevaluate everything she ever thought about you. Because the truth is, when a man steps back, when he becomes calm, grounded, and emotionally detached, he becomes a mirror that exposes what she never wanted to see. She starts noticing that the emotional fuel she used to receive from you, validation, reassurance, attention, is no longer available. She begins to realize that the connection she once controlled is slipping out of her grasp. And suddenly she starts viewing you through a different lens. The flaws she magnified no longer feel important. The mistakes she exaggerated lose their power. The arguments she initiated feel unnecessary. What now stands out is the strength you showed by walking away mentally before you ever walked away physically. Your emotional detachment becomes the catalyst for her recognition. She starts to understand that you were not weak for caring, you were strong for loving deeply. And now you are even stronger for stepping back when that love was no longer respected. She begins replaying the moments when you showed patience and she responded with distance. She rethinks the times you offered honesty and she gave you confusion. She re examines the days when you gave effort and she acted like it wasn't enough. And as she revisits these memories, the narrative she created about you starts to crumble. It's not that she suddenly changes into someone new, it's that your changed energy strips away the illusion she once hid behind. When you stop giving a damn, you stop feeding her ego, you stop allowing the upper hand, you stop allowing her to feel superior simply because you cared too much. The silence you create becomes a spotlight on everything she overlooked. And that spotlight forces her to confront something deeply uncomfortable. She may have lost someone who was genuinely irreplaceable. She begins to see the small things you did, the text you sent just to check on her, the support you offered without being asked, the way you tried to understand her even when she wasn't making it easy. She starts comparing your consistency to the inconsistency of others. She starts realizing that the world doesn't give her the same attention you once gave freely, and that realization begins to sting because she assumed you would always be there, always care, always try. And now she sees that this assumption was a dangerous illusion. This is when the regret begins to form, not because she suddenly loves you, but because she suddenly understands what losing your energy truly means. Your emotional presence was something she relied on, even during moments she acted indifferent. Now, facing the void you left, she begins to see the truth she avoided. You weren't the one who needed to earn her. She was the one who needed to earn you, and she didn't. But the beauty of this shift is that you no longer care whether she realizes it or not. You didn't detach to make her regret. You detached to reclaim your peace. You didn't pull back to hurt her. You pulled back to heal yourself. And ironically, the moment you stop needing her validation is the exact moment she starts craving yours. That's the power of walking away emotionally before life forces you to walk away physically. When you stop giving a damn, something inside you settles. You stop chasing, you stop overthinking, you stop analyzing every word she says or doesn't say. You stop tying your worth to her reactions, and that inner stillness, that calmness, becomes something she's not prepared for, because for so long she fed off your emotional responses, whether it was your reassurance, your frustration, your eagerness, or your disappointment. Your emotions gave her a sense of importance and control. But when you detach, that emotional supply disappears, and what replaces it is a version of you she can't predict, can't manipulate, and can't read anymore. She starts noticing that your energy no longer rises or falls based on her behavior. She sees that your mood is no longer tied to her. You're no longer reacting to her silence with anxiety, nor to her attention with excitement. You've stopped giving her the power to dictate how you feel. This shift creates a kind of emotional independence that she didn't expect from you. You become stable, steady, unbothered, and that stability is something she can feel even from a distance. The calmness you now carry shakes her more than your anger ever could, because anger still shows you care, frustration still shows you're emotionally invested. But silence, indifference, peace, that's where she realizes she no longer has the influence she used to. She begins to sense that her tactics, pulling away, testing you, ignoring you, no longer work. The emotional strings she once used to pull you in any direction suddenly feel ineffective. And when a woman loses the ability to provoke an emotional reaction, she starts to question her position in your life. This is where her confusion begins. She starts wondering what changed in you. She starts asking herself if you finally moved on, if you found someone new, or if you simply discovered your self worth. She tries to analyze your behavior the way you once analyzed hers. She looks for signs that you still care, for moments where she can confirm that she still matters. But the truth is, you've reached a level of emotional clarity that no longer requires her validation. You have chosen peace over chaos, self respect over approval, presence over chasing. And this creates a version of you that she finds both attractive and intimidating. Your emotional calmness also forces her to reflect on her own behavior. She begins to recognize how much of her power was built on your over investment. She sees how her confidence was tied to your constant availability. She realizes that the dynamic was never balanced. She was comfortable because you were always the one trying. But now, as you stand emotionally steady, the imbalance becomes visible from her side, and she starts to feel the weight of the effort she never gave back. This reflection stirs something in her that wasn't there before: accountability. Not because you demanded it, but because your detachment exposes the truth. She begins replaying old conversations with new understanding. She remembers moments when you needed support and she brushed it off. She recalls times when you put in effort and she didn't match it. And she realizes that her actions pushed you into the very calmness that now threatens to leave her behind. And what makes all of this even more powerful is that you didn't have to force anything. You didn't need to pretend, manipulate, or create distance artificially. You simply stopped giving energy to someone who wasn't giving it back. And in doing so, you became centered, grounded, and emotionally self sufficient. That self sufficiency is what destabilizes her the most, because it shows her that you no longer need her approval, attention, or presence to feel whole. That's the moment she starts feeling the loss more deeply than she ever expected, because she realizes that the peace you found without her is the peace she never gave you when you were together, and now she's the one who has to live with that truth. When you stop giving a damn, something incredible begins to happen, not just inside you, but in the energy between you and her. For so long, she was used to being the center of your emotional world. She was used to the idea that no matter what she did, No matter how she acted, you would always be the one to fix things, to chase, to apologize, to maintain the connection. She knew the moment she pulled away, you would come running. She knew silence from her would create panic in you. She believed that the slightest withdrawal on her and would make you compensate with triple the effort. But when you stop caring, when you stop reacting, when you stop feeding the emotional loop that kept her in control, everything shifts instantly. She begins to feel the loss of that power even before she consciously understands it. She starts sensing the emptiness created by the absence of your energy. Where she once felt secure, knowing she could always trigger a reaction in you, now she feels uncertainty. And uncertainty is what starts to unravel her confidence. Because a woman who always felt certain about her hold on you begins to lose her grip the moment you stop giving her the validation she built her comfort on. You start to live differently. You carry yourself with ease instead of emotional tension. You stop checking your phone for her messages. You stop waiting for her to return. You stop worrying about what she thinks. And most importantly, you stop centering your life around someone who never centered hers around you. That emotional detachment creates a sense of inner freedom that radiates in ways you don't even notice. But she does. She feels that distance even if you never say a word. She sees that you no longer react to her games. She notices that your tone is calmer, simpler, more grounded. She observes that your attention is no longer glued to her, but spread across your own goals, your own life, your own growth. And that subtle shift from being emotionally controlled to becoming emotionally independent is something she cannot ignore because now, for the first time, she realizes she is no longer your priority. This forces her to start competing with the world for your energy, something she never had to do before. She begins to wonder what you're doing, who you're spending time with, what you're focusing on. She gets curious about the version of you she never allowed herself to see, the man who is confident without needing her attention, the man who is stable without needing her approval, the man who thrives even when she is absent. And that curiosity slowly turns into discomfort. She begins to notice that you've upgraded mentally. The emotional dependence she used to sense from you is gone. The neediness she once used to control you has disappeared. And the moment she realizes that you don't need her, but she might still need the validation she got from you, everything inside her begins to shift. She starts wondering if she pushed too hard. She starts questioning her choices. She begins to regret the time she pulled away just to watch you chase, because now the chase is over. Now the dynamic has flipped. Now she is the one who feels the weight of losing someone who used to care too much. Your emotional evolution threatens the identity she built around your attention. She can no longer rely on guilt, silence, or mixed signals to pull you back. She can no longer assume you will choose her above yourself. And this realization forces her to confront something she avoided for a long time. You were the constant, the stable one, the loyal one, and she took that for granted. But now you're no longer handing out the energy she once fed on. You're investing that energy into your peace, your purpose, your growth. And that's when she fully understands something she never expected to feel. Losing your attention is far more painful than losing the relationship itself, because now she has to live with the truth that you found what she never gave you yourself. There comes a moment after all the chaos, the chasing, the overthinking, and the emotional exhaustion when you realize that you deserve peace more than you deserve pain. And that moment is exactly when everything begins to shift inside you. When you stop giving a damn, when you finally let go of the emotional weight you were carrying for someone who didn't appreciate it, you open the door to a level of self growth that becomes unstoppable. This is where transformation begins, not because she changed, but because you did. You stop living in reaction to her behavior. You stop shaping your day around her silence. You stop adjusting your self worth based on whether she shows interest or not. And in that detachment, something powerful awakens inside you. You start to see yourself clearly for the first time in a long time. You start remembering the man you were before you placed all your value in someone else's hands. You begin reconnecting with your passions, your goals, your ambitions. You rediscover the parts of your identity that got buried under emotional stress. Instead of checking your phone to see if she texted, you start checking your progress. Instead of worrying about losing her, you start focusing on not losing yourself again. That internal shift from emotional dependence to emotional independence creates a stronger, wiser, more grounded version of you. You begin investing in your physical health, your mental strength, your financial growth, your emotional balance. You start valuing your time differently. You start choosing peace over drama. You start surrounding yourself with people who appreciate your presence rather than exploit your effort. And all of this growth begins because you finally stop caring about someone who didn't care enough about you. And here's the irony: the moment you start rising, she feels it. Even if you haven't spoken in weeks or months, she senses the change. She can feel the distance in the way you no longer orbit around her. She can see the glow up in your confidence, your calmness, your focus. And that growth becomes a reminder of what she lost. The man she once took for granted is now becoming the man she can't stop thinking about, not because you're chasing her, but because you're becoming everything she never believed you could be without her. Your growth highlights her stagnation. Your evolution exposes the lack of effort she showed. The very things she overlooked, the kindness, the loyalty, the commitment, are the same qualities she now realizes are rare. And while you're moving forward, she's stuck replaying the moments that pushed you away. She starts imagining what it would have been like if she had matched your effort, respected your loyalty, appreciated your presence. But now, those thoughts only exist in hindsight. You've evolved beyond the version of yourself she once had access to. This is the most powerful outcome of not giving a damn. You unlock the best version of yourself. Not for her, not to get her attention, because you finally chose to prioritize your own well being. You begin to understand that peace is more valuable than attention, purpose is more rewarding than validation, and growth is more satisfying than chasing someone who doesn't see your worth. This version of you doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't cling. This version of you attracts naturally, moves confidently, and lives intentionally. And as you rise, you realize something you never understood before: losing her wasn't the tragedy you thought it was. It was the catalyst you needed to become the man you were always meant to be. The man who no longer settles for emotional breadcrumbs. The man who no longer breaks himself to keep someone else comfortable. The man who knows his value so deeply that he will never again give his heart to someone who doesn't value it. That is the ultimate power of not giving a damn, because once you rise into the strongest version of yourself, you finally understand that walking away wasn't the end of your story, it was the beginning.